Hi there, everybody. My name is Mike LaPlante, and I'm the average wine enthusiast. I thought I would just create a little impromptu video today because today is a very special day for wine lovers. It is World, not National, World Malbec Day. That's right, this is a day that we celebrate the varietal known as Malbec. It's got its own interesting story to tell as well, very similar to Carmenère's story. As far as Malbec goes in my wine journey, I have to admit that the first few Malbecs that I had the opportunity to drink weren't that good. They were from Ontario, and because Malbec tends to grow in a lot of different climates, and based on its terroir, which I hope to talk about in a future show very soon, it will take on the taste of wherever it's grown. And I think that the terroir here in Essex County, even in the Niagara region, doesn't bode well for many of the varietals that are grown here because, like I said, we live in Canada, and even though this is the most southern part of Canada, it's not necessarily the best soil or the best bodies of water to be growing grapes next to. But I'll be talking about that at some other point. But back to World Malbec Day, I then realized that Malbec, if you get it from Argentina, you're probably going to get a pretty decent bottle of Malbec. And Malbec's another one of those wines that's a relatively good deal. The wine industry out of Argentina is it's big, and it was started by the president or the prime minister of Argentina back in the 1850s, and that's why we have World Malbec Day today, because of this prime minister or president or whoever he was. I suspect I'll be putting something over here with the name of this very forward-thinking gentleman in Argentina. It was, like I said, in the 1850s that he decided that Argentina should start its own wine industry. And so he brought over a ton of French vines, and he wanted to see which one of these vines would do well in Argentina and produce good wine. Very smart thing to do, for sure. And it turns out that Malbec was a prime performer in the Argentinian climates and altitudes, the terroir. And so that's what they really started concentrating on. The interesting story about the Malbec grape, though, is its origins. It originated, of course, in France, and it grew in a region known as Cahors, and that's Cahors. And that was the region that this grape grew in, but the French name for it is Côte, C-O-T. So the grape they grow in Cahors now, they call it Malbec because Malbec is a far more popular grape name. It's the same grape, but than the word Côte. Do you sleep on it or do you drink it? But the interesting part about it is that since the Argentinians brought the vines over to Argentina, in 1850, it was about 10 years later that the horrible phylloxera infestation wrecked the French wine industry and decimated many varietals. It led to the supposed extinction of Carmenère even, and the Côte grape was no exception. So the grapes that grow, the vines that grow in France now are the result of the very few Côte vines that were salvaged somehow, that didn't, they were either protected or, they did something to save these vines so that they could start again. And so they didn't really have a choice, though. Once the phylloxera hit, they weren't necessarily saving the best vines. They were saving the vines that were savable, basically. Whereas the vines they brought to Argentina, those vines were the best vines. So a lot of folks believe that the the tradition, there's probably a word for that, the thing that held on from the way back days within that vine is in Argentina, but it isn't necessarily in the place where it originated in Cahors. So that that varietal, the past that grape is known for is more well represented from Argentina than it is from Cahors. So obviously the people in Cahors, they sell and grow Malbec. You can get a bottle of Côte. Those are the old school dudes that want to keep that tradition alive as far as the naming convention goes. But Malbec and Côte, same grape, and the Malbecs in Argentina are, for the most part, many people believe, far better than the Malbecs that grow out of Cahors. And it's because of the heritage of the vines in both of those places. So that's a little synopsis of where Malbec comes from and why we are blessed to have Malbec on our table. And I have a bottle of Malbec here right now. I pulled this out of my cellar. It's a 2014, and it is high altitude, hand-picked, berry sorted from a region known as Luján del Cuyo, and the name of the wine is Versado. And supposedly the high altitude stuff is where it's at, as it were. Decanted this bottle about 2 hours ago, and why don't we have a little sip and see what we can find out about this Malbec. On the nose, we have some vanilla and a little bit of leather, and some fruit. Currant. That's what I'm smelling. It's beautiful. Beautiful nose on that. Let's give it a swig. Black cherries, right off the bat. Fair amount of tannins sticking to the back of my throat. Not necessarily too hard on the palate, so it's mellowed over its 5-year aging process. What else do we got in here? Pretty complex wine, that's for sure. So along with the black cherries, we have plums, a little bit of hint of like mocha, not cacao or cocoa, but like a mocha, very smooth and refined. And there's some minerality in there as well. Earthy tones for sure. And the tannins are there, very apparent, but not overpowering, very tame, I guess you'd call them. Tame tannins, but they're quite apparent in my mouth, and the finish just keeps going and going. Malbec, it's a great wine. Usually you can get a decent vintage at your local wine store for a decent price. The wine industry in Argentina is flourishing. They're pumping out many cases of wine. I'm sure it's in the millions as far as bottles go. As I just read that France pumped out 250 million bottles of wine in 2018. I suspect that Argentina is, in 100 million of bottles itself, I'm sure. So if you're watching this on World Malbec Day, crack yourself open a bottle of Malbec. And if you're watching it a few days later, still crack yourself open a bottle of Malbec. You won't be sorry at all. I guess that's going to do it for this little impromptu show. Thanks a lot for watching, and if you like the show, please subscribe. If you have friends who are wine lovers, turn somebody on to a nice Malbec. You'll make a wine friend instantly. So I guess that's going to do it for now. From lovely Windsor, Ontario, I'm Mike LaPlante, and I'm the Average Wine Enthusiast. Salute!